Welcome to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording today's episode on Tuesday, April 30th, and joining me as always, my friend and colleague, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, interesting developments inside of what is a seemingly endless series of changes to the job market. Phenomenon being people who have good jobs are not trading them for other good jobs. This is a somewhat stay-in-place job market, as Alex Tanzi from Bloomberg articulated in a story that he's recently published. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this, what this might mean to the economy as a whole. It sounds like it's a confidence issue, perhaps.
Absolutely. The labor market is cooling. You know, when you compare the quits that we were seeing in 2022, right? 2022, when the labor market was absolutely on fire, right? And inflation peaked at 9% midway through that year. You know, American quit 6.1 million fewer jobs in 2023 when compared to 2022. So quit rates are falling, you know, in the past year. And it's likely continuing in 2024 because, you know, when hiring is slowing, workers are less likely to want to take a chance, you know, to go out there and not only switch their jobs, right, potentially switch their jobs, but also to take a risk and end up unemployed for a period because the duration of unemployment is actually rising. You know, the labor market is cooling. It's definitely a sign that inflation could be on the way down. You know, as we talked before on previous podcasts, that even though we're seeing this surge in the first quarter of this year in the inflation numbers, right, this kind of stalling this inflation in the first quarter of this year, it's likely that the U.S. economy will slow later this year, and that we could see really the inflation numbers come in towards the Fed's 2% target. You know, so far, even with the inflation remaining somewhat high, consumer prices remaining somewhat elevated, we're seeing wage growth ease, right? We've seen wage growth ease in the first few employment reports of this year. And so I expect that as the labor market continues to cool, consumers will slow down their spending. And that combined with dwindling savings means the household will really tighten the belt a little bit in the latter half of this year. So real world examples. I mean, you know, how can people that are listening to us, how can they see this in their everyday life? Where does this manifest itself in the marketplace? There's just remember we had these massive labor shortages, right? And when we had those massive labor shortages, it was really easy to switch jobs. It was easy to go take any kind of job and get paid. I mean, you know, McDonald's was hiring at $25 an hour in some places, right? And so it was easy for workers to switch jobs very rapidly. Today, the labor market is slowing, and that basically means that it's going to take a little bit longer, and you may not have the same wage opportunities that you may have had just 2 years ago. Remember, people often switch jobs to go out and get a higher paying job, right? And so if employers are just not paying as much as they were, the opportunities are just not out there anymore. And so people are deciding to stay put. Well, I guess that's reasonable. We're kind of amidst a series that you and I were working on about, you know, jobs of the future. And we did talk a little bit about jobs of the present. I think to kind of bottom line this to some degree, right now, if you have a good job, you are not going to give up that good job to go out and to take a chance on something else somewhere else. That there is something of a, not to say like a psychological barrier to that, but it feels like the risk is greater at this point.
in particular, if you've been somewhere for a while, you're in your work environment, maybe you don't love your job, maybe your job is challenging, but you have a job. And so, the impetus that might have been there over the past couple of years seems to have switched. And now it's really more about holding on to what you have than going out and pursuing the next big opportunity. That combined with the fact that I don't know that the big, financial reward opportunities for changing jobs is today what it was a couple of years ago. I'm not hearing that from anyone.
That's right. Labor market cooled. And even if you're considering changing jobs, you're thinking twice because there's just not as many opportunities out there.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next sort of report on quit levels. It's fascinating data. It's not something that you and I have spent a lot of time looking at. Of course, it's kind of crazy how far we've come in the last X number of months. I believe that, we did an episode, within the last 2 years about quiet quitting. That phenomenon seems to be all but gone. Let's bring it to an end there. For Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.
Attention parents, teachers, and taxpayers. Do you care about the decisions being made in K-12 public education? Do you want to know how those decisions impact your students and school district? Chalkboard News has you covered. We're delivering fact-based reporting on the policies that shape school safety, curriculum, and recovery from learning loss. At Chalkboard News, we're cutting through the politics and focusing on the facts behind the issues impacting students, teachers, and families. Get this news delivered to your inbox for free by signing up at chalkboardnews.com.